I snuck my ex in while he drove the kids to school. He caught me red-handed. Honestly, if you guys judge me for this, I deserve it. But I need to put this somewhere because I literally cannot understand how I messed up this badly. I got caught cheating and it went down in literally the worst way possible. I'm talking about the kind of situation where you lose everything and everyone finds out and your whole life just falls apart in one morning. Yeah, that happened to me 3 weeks ago, and I'm still trying to process it. Let me back up a little. My husband's name is David, male, 29. We got married when I was 21, right after I graduated college with my early childhood education degree. I know that sounds young, but we'd been together since sophomore year and it felt right at the time. David was one of those guys who had everything figured out. Good job, stable income, wanted the whole house and kids thing. And 21-year-old me was like, yes, please, because I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. We had our first kid, Emma, when I was 23. Then our son, Lucas, 2 years later. I became a stay-at-home mom because daycare was expensive, and David made just decent enough money. So the plan was that I'd go back to teaching once both kids were in school full-time. I had this early childhood education degree, but wasn't even sure I wanted to teach. Meanwhile, David was already talking about 5-year plans and retirement savings and all this adult stuff that made him seem so mature and together. Looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of having my life figured out than actually being ready for marriage, but whatever. We were young and dumb and thought we knew everything. For the first few years, everything was super good. David worked hard and provided for us. I took care of the house and kids and felt like we were living this perfect suburban life. We bought a 4-bedroom house in this family-friendly neighborhood with good schools, had date nights once a month when my mom would watch the kids. But then, somewhere around year 4, I started feeling really weird about everything. Like I was losing myself completely and becoming this person I didn't recognize. I went from being someone with her own thoughts and interests and dreams to just being David's wife and Emma and Lucas's mom. And don't get me wrong, I love my kids more than anything in this world, but I was starting to feel invisible as an actual person. David would come home from work wanting to talk about boring adult stuff like our mortgage payment, or what preschool to pick for Lucas, or whether we should refinance the house while I'd been home all day watching Disney Junior and doing endless loads of laundry and cleaning up the same messes over and over. I felt like my brain was literally turning to mush from lack of adult stimulation. Like I could literally feel myself getting dumber by the day. I started spending more time on Instagram and TikTok while the kids napped. Seeing all my college friends traveling and having careers and going out to bars. Living these exciting, independent lives while I was wiping noses and doing laundry and feeling invisible. I was struggling with the identity shift from being this fun college girl to just being someone's wife and someone's mom. I know social media is fake, but when you're feeling that low about yourself, it's easy to believe everyone else has it figured out and you're the only one struggling. That's probably where this whole mess started, if I'm being honest. I was in this really vulnerable headspace where I was questioning all my life choices and feeling like I'd given up everything that made me interesting to become this boring suburban mom. Then Tyler messaged me out of nowhere. Tyler was my ex from freshman year before I met David. We dated for 8 months, and honestly, it was pretty intense. Tyler was spontaneous and charming and kind of bad news in a way that used to really excite 18-year-old me. My parents hated him, which probably made me like him more back then. He hit me up on Instagram about a year ago with some casual message about how good I looked in my family photos. Just a, "Hey, how are you doing?" under this picture of me and David and the kids at the beach last summer. I should have ignored it completely, but I was feeling so lonely and invisible that getting attention from anyone felt amazing. Even if it was my ex from 8 years ago. We started messaging back and forth. Nothing crazy at first, just catching up about life and reminiscing about college. Tyler told me about his job in sales and how he traveled all over the state for work, how he was still single and living in this cool downtown apartment. The conversations got flirtier pretty quickly, though. Tyler has always been smooth with words, and he started saying things like how incredible I looked in my pictures, and asking why I seemed sad or distant in some of them. He remembered all these tiny details about me that David had completely forgotten over the years, like how obsessed I was with true crime podcasts. I found myself looking forward to Tyler's messages more than anything else in my day. He made me feel seen and interesting again, instead of just being this exhausted mom who hadn't worn real clothes in weeks. After a few months, he started asking to meet up, just for coffee, just to catch up in person. I kept saying no because obviously that's a terrible idea when you're married, but he kept pushing in this charming way, and eventually I gave in. Finally, I agreed to meet him at this Starbucks across town, while the kids were at my mom's house one Saturday. I told David I was going shopping and would be back in a few hours. Seeing Tyler again was like stepping back in time to when I was young and fun and had possibilities ahead of me. He looked exactly the same as in college. We talked for 3 hours, and it felt like no time had passed. Tyler listened to me complain about feeling trapped and invisible, told me I was too smart and beautiful to waste away in suburbia, that I deserved more excitement and passion in my life. I knew he was probably just telling me what I wanted to hear, but it felt so good. When was the last time David called me beautiful or acted like I was interesting? I honestly couldn't remember. That's how it started. Meeting up every few weeks when I could find excuses to get away. Always somewhere David wouldn't see us. Usually when he was at work and the kids were at daycare or with my mom. For months we just talked and flirted, but didn't cross any major lines. Tyler would compliment me and make me feel attractive again. Listen to me vent about my marriage without judgment. Made me remember what it felt like to have someone genuinely interested in what I had to say. But eventually the emotional affair turned physical. It started with longer hugs and touching my hand across the table. Then Tyler kissed me in the parking lot of this restaurant we'd met at for lunch. I should have stopped it there, but I didn't. I was addicted to how Tyler made me feel, like I was this desirable woman with her own wants and needs instead of just David's wife and the kids' mom. We started hooking up in his car or hotel rooms when he was in town for work. I got really good at making up excuses, errands to run, friends to meet, appointments that didn't exist. David never questioned any of it because he trusted me completely. The guilt was killing me, but I couldn't stop. Tyler represented everything I felt like I'd given up when I got married young. Freedom, excitement, being wanted for who I am instead of what I can do for other people. This went on for about 6 months. I got really good at lying and covering my tracks. David had no idea. He was focused on getting a promotion at work, and we weren't fighting or anything. We were just living these separate lives where he did his thing and I did mine, and neither of us was really paying attention to the other person. Then Tyler started pushing for more. He said he was falling for me again and wanted us to have a real relationship, that I should leave David and we could figure out the custody situation together. Part of me was tempted by the fantasy, but I'm not stupid. I have 2 little kids and no job and no way to support myself. And despite everything, I didn't want to destroy their stable home just because I was having some quarter-life crisis. So I told Tyler we needed to slow down, that I wasn't ready to blow up my entire life and needed time to think. Tyler didn't take this well. He started getting possessive and demanding more of my time, showing up at places where he knew I'd be with the kids, texting me constantly and getting angry when I didn't respond right away. I should have ended it completely, but Tyler had this way of making me feel guilty for leading him on. The whole situation was getting out of control, but I felt stuck between 2 lives. Too scared to leave my marriage, but too addicted to Tyler's attention to give him up. And that's what led to the morning that destroyed everything. It was a Tuesday in March, and David was getting Emma and Lucas ready for school like he does every morning before work. Tyler had been blowing up my phone since 6 a.m., saying he was in town for a meeting and needed to see me. He was staying at some hotel 15 minutes away and begging me to come over for just an hour. I kept saying no because the timing was too risky. David's schedule was predictable, but what if something went wrong and he came home early? What if one of the kids got sick at school and I needed to pick them up? But Tyler kept pushing. He said he was leaving town that afternoon and wouldn't be back for weeks. He was getting frustrated with all the sneaking around and wanted us to make some real decisions. Finally, I agreed to meet him, but only for a short time. My plan was to wait until David left with the kids around 7:30, then drive to Tyler's hotel. Be back home by 9:30 before anyone would expect to reach me. Except Tyler had a different idea. He wanted to come to my house instead since we'd have privacy and wouldn't have to worry about being seen at a hotel. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was a horrible idea, but Tyler made it sound so reasonable. Just this once, so we could have a real conversation without rushing. He promised he'd leave whenever I asked, and we'd be super careful about timing. I'm an idiot, so I said yes. The plan was simple. David would leave with the kids at 7:30 like always. Tyler would come by around 8 and be gone by 9:15. Plenty of time before David got back from dropping the kids off and going to work. That morning, I was a complete mess. Made breakfast for everyone, but kept checking the clock every 2 seconds and jumping at every little sound. David asked if I was okay because I seemed weird, but I blamed it on drinking too much coffee. I watched from the window as David loaded the kids into his car. Emma waved at me, and I waved back, feeling like the worst mom on the planet, but I was already in too deep to back out. Tyler showed up at my door 10 minutes later. We barely made it to the living room before we were all over each other. All that tension from weeks of sneaking around just exploded. Tyler kept saying how much he missed me and how good it felt to finally be somewhere we could relax. I led him upstairs to my bedroom, which felt like crossing this huge line. This was me and David's bed, where we'd made our kids and had quiet talks about our future. And now I was bringing another man into that space. But in the moment, it felt inevitable, like everything had been building to this point where I'd finally chosen Tyler over my marriage. We were so caught up in each other that we lost track of time completely. That's why neither of us heard David's car in the driveway, or his footsteps coming up the front walkway, or the sound of his key in the lock. The first sign something was wrong was when I heard the front door slam shut, followed by David's voice calling my name, but not in his usual cheerful good morning way, in this flat tone that made my blood turn to ice. Tyler and I froze in bed looking at each other with pure panic. I grabbed my phone and saw that it was only 8:45. David wasn't supposed to be home for at least 2 hours. What had gone wrong? I could hear David moving around downstairs, opening and closing doors like he was looking for something. Then his footsteps on the stairs getting closer to our bedroom where Tyler and I were struggling to get dressed. There was nowhere to hide and no way to get Tyler out without David seeing him. Our bedroom was at the top of the stairs with no other exit. Tyler's car was parked right in front of the house. I managed to throw on a robe just as David appeared in the doorway of our bedroom. The look on his face when he saw Tyler standing there shirtless holding his clothes will haunt me forever. At first it wasn't even anger, just complete shock and confusion, like his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. His wife was in their bed with another man on a Tuesday morning while the kids were supposed to be at school. David just stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, looking between Tyler and me like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. Then reality hit, and his face went through like 5 different emotions at once: hurt, rage, betrayal, disgust, all mixed together into this expression I'd never seen before. He didn't yell or scream like I expected, just said my name in this quiet, disappointed voice that was somehow worse than if he'd started throwing things. I couldn't even form words. Just stood there in my robe feeling like the worst person who'd ever lived while Tyler finished getting dressed with shaking hands. Finally, Tyler mumbled something about how sorry he was and that this wasn't how he wanted David to find out. That made David's attention snap to me with this look of complete betrayal. He asked how long I'd been lying to him and if anything about our marriage had been real. If I'd ever actually loved him or just used him for security while I figured out what I wanted. I tried to explain that it wasn't like that, but every word that came out of my mouth sounded pathetic and selfish. David cut me off and told Tyler to get out of his house before he called the police. His voice was shaking with anger. Tyler grabbed his stuff and basically ran down the stairs without looking back at me. I heard the front door slam and his car starting up. Just like that, he was gone, and I was alone with David and the complete wreckage of our marriage. David told me to get dressed because we needed to talk, and he couldn't have this conversation while I was in a robe in the bedroom where I'd just been with another man. I put on jeans and a sweater with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. When I came back downstairs, David was sitting at our kitchen table with his head in his hands. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. He told me that Emma had forgotten her backpack and asked him to turn around and get it. That's why he'd come home unexpectedly. Our 6-year-old daughter's forgetfulness had exposed my affair and destroyed our family. The irony was so awful it made me physically sick. If Emma had remembered her backpack, David never would have caught us. I could have kept living my double life for I don't even know how long. But instead, my daughter's innocent mistake had blown up everything. David asked me again how long it had been going on, and this time I told him everything. about Tyler reaching out on Instagram, the months of emotional affair before it got physical, all the lies and excuses I'd been using to sneak around. With every detail I shared, David looked more and more crushed. He asked if I loved Tyler and if I wanted to leave him for my ex. I tried to explain that it wasn't about love, but about feeling lost and invisible and craving excitement I couldn't get from our married life. But what David said just made it worse. That if I'd fallen in love with someone else, at least that would be a reason he could understand. But throwing away our marriage and our family just because I was bored was unforgivable. David asked questions I didn't want to answer about where Tyler and I had been meeting and whether other people knew about the affair, if I'd been exposing our children to my lies. I had to admit that Tyler had been at places where Emma and Lucas were present, that I'd introduced him as just an old friend when we'd run into each other at the park once, that our kids had unknowingly been part of covering for my cheating. That's when David really lost it. He could maybe forgive me for betraying him, but involving our innocent children in my lies was a line he couldn't cross. He said I'd put my own selfish desires over everything else. David told me he wanted me to pack a bag and stay somewhere else while he figured out what to do next. He couldn't stand to look at me right now and needed space to process everything without me trying to explain or justify what I'd done. I begged him not to make me leave, promised I'd end things with Tyler completely and go to marriage counseling and do whatever it took to fix our relationship. But David said I should have thought about that before I brought another man into our bedroom. He said he needed to focus on our children and figuring out how to explain why Mommy wouldn't be living at home anymore. I packed a bag with shaking hands while David sat in the living room staring at nothing. I kept trying to apologize and explain, but he wouldn't even look at me. Just told me to leave my key and said his lawyer would be in touch. I've been staying at my sister's apartment for the past 3 weeks while David files for divorce. He's asking for full custody of Emma and Lucas based on my cheating and poor judgment. He said that I'm an unfit mother who prioritized my affair over my children's well-being. The kids don't understand why I'm not coming home. David told them I'm sick and need to stay away until I get better. Emma keeps asking when Mommy will be well enough to come back, and it breaks my heart every time. My family is disgusted with me. My parents can't believe I threw away a good marriage with a man who loved me. My sister lets me stay with her, but makes it clear she thinks I'm an idiot who got what I deserved. Tyler disappeared completely after that morning, blocked me on everything, and went radio silent. All those promises about wanting a future together evaporated the second things got real and messy. Turns out he was just interested in the excitement of an affair, not actually dealing with the consequences. I lost my husband, my kids, my home, and my family's respect, all for a guy who couldn't even be bothered to return my calls once his fun was over. The man who claimed he loved me and wanted to build a life together abandoned me the moment I actually needed him. Now I'm 26 years old, starting over with nothing. No job or home and limited visitation with my children. All because I got bored with my perfectly good life and convinced myself I deserved more excitement. David is already talking to a realtor about selling our house. He doesn't want to live somewhere with so many memories of our failed marriage. My children are going to lose their childhood home because of my choices. Emma keeps asking her dad why I can't just take medicine and get better so I can come home. She doesn't understand that Mommy made choices that can't be undone with pills or apologies, that some mistakes destroy everything you care about. The worst part is that David is actually handling everything really well. He's being an amazing single dad and protecting the kids from most of the drama. Never badmouths me in front of them, even though he has every right to hate me. I keep thinking about that Tuesday morning and how different everything could have been. If Emma hadn't forgotten her backpack, if I'd said no when Tyler asked to come over, if I'd just appreciated what I had instead of chasing some fantasy of excitement. But I didn't, and now I have to live with the consequences forever. My children will grow up in a broken home because their mother was selfish and stupid. They'll always remember that I chose another man over our family. People keep asking me if the affair was worth it, and I want to scream at them that of course it wasn't. Nothing could be worth losing my kids and destroying their sense of security. I thought I was missing out on something by being married young and settling into domestic life. But what I was actually missing out on was appreciating the man who loved me and the beautiful family we'd built together. Now I'm living in my sister's spare room, wondering how I became the kind of person who could lie to her husband's face every day for months, who could look at her children over breakfast, knowing she was about to sneak around with another man. The version of myself that I became during those months feels like a stranger now. Someone selfish and reckless who convinced herself she deserved to have everything she wanted without consequences. I know writing this won't change anything or undo the damage I've caused, but maybe someone else will read this and think twice before they make the same mistakes I did, before they throw away something real for something that was never going to last. Because the affair wasn't really about Tyler or missing my ex or needing more passion. It was about me not being mature enough to communicate with my husband about feeling lost. David and I could have worked through my identity issues if I'd been honest about struggling instead of seeking comfort from another man. We could have found ways to reconnect in our relationship if I'd given him the chance. Instead, I chose the nuclear option and destroyed everything we'd built together. And now I am left with nothing.